Welcome to our deep dive. We're digging into some pretty interesting topics buzzing around the gaming world, all based on the sources.
What's going on, everybody?
That's
Mortem
right. Our
here.
job
This
today
time
is
bringing
to
you
sift
some
through these
highlights
articles,
from the
these
Xbox
videos,
Games
covering
Showcase
Microsoft's
that happened
latest
just
Xbox
yesterday from the
moves,
time of this
some,
video,
very
highlighting, of
cryptic
course,
game
everything
hints,
that
and even
Xbox has
remake
going on,
rumors.
but more
We wanna
importantly,
pull out
kind
the
of
key
shaping the rest
insights
of my year in terms of
honestly,
reviews and release dates and the like. To that
genuinely
end, we've got a lot to talk about, but I always want to mention at the top of these, I am not covering every single thing that was mentioned. In fact, most of what I'm covering is the stuff that is, of course, relevant to the channel itself. And again, what I plan on reviewing for the rest of the year.
Well, instead of pushing ahead with their own first-party device right now, it seems like they might be pausing or even canceling that
Looking forward to hearing what people have to say about a few of these for sure. But before we actually dive fully into this showcase, I did want to mention two quick things from the PC gaming show, which happened just after this one because they're not really worth doing an entire separate video for, but were still really important to me. We saw at that show the announcement of an enhanced edition of Neverwinter Nights 2. Very big fan of that. That is one of the CRPGs I have reviewed over the years, and I plan on checking that out when it launches on July 15th. Also at that show, they showed off a trailer for The Alters, another game I've been following, but I've already made videos about that, so you'll hear more about it from me relatively soon as it launches in just a few days. Now, getting back to the thing we're all here for, which is, of course, the actual Xbox stuff, the show opened and ultimately kind of closed with The Outer Worlds 2. This is because, while it was mentioned at the top of the show, they also did a deep dive following the show, and I plan on making a separate video about that so we can go over details and just how some of that stuff is looking, but the Spark Notes is basically that it appears to be Obsidian's largest game to date. They're clearly putting a lot of effort into that and expanding it, and given that they're also charging an $80 price tag for it, I imagine they better. But again, I'll have more to say about that with a separate video entirely. Though, real quick before we move on, it is actually releasing on October 29th, so we have an official release date there as well. But moving on, we have High on Life 2. This was announced and is getting a 2025 release date, so we won't have to wait too long for it. High on Life being a very fun little shooter that was packed full of incredibly crass and raunchy humor. In fact, just as a little aside note, the original High on Life is one of two games I have ever had demonetized after covering them on my channel, the other one being Callisto Protocol, actually. So just kind of a funny little anecdote, but either way, even if I don't wind up covering it for that reason, I will absolutely be playing that one for myself at the very least. Following that, we got the announcement of Resonance, a Plague Tale Legacy, which is apparently coming in 2026 and presumably related to the Plague Tale series. Now, we don't get a ton of details here. It seems to mostly be cinematic. There seems to be these bright lines connecting everything and a gritty atmosphere full of blood and mystery at the very least. Details on that one are a little skint at the moment. At any rate, we will be learning more about it in 2026, which is apparently its release window. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is actually not a game at all, because we saw the announcement of Xbox Crack at Handheld Gaming, which is in fact the Xbox ROG Ally X, which is going to boast things like basically double the hardware of what is currently in a Steam Deck, better screen, better everything really, with the added addition that Microsoft Windows has been adjusted and made to run natively on this bit of hardware, which is the especially interesting bit. And while this isn't set to release until later this year, I did want to call it out specifically because as somebody who covers the Steam Deck in basically every review, this is of note to me. But while this will have access to the catalog of stuff on like Game Pass and all that with their Everything is an Xbox marketing campaign, what would sell me on this is just, quite frankly, how easy is it going to be to access Steam games on this? With it using Microsoft OS, theoretically you should just be able to download Steam and access them, but there's how something should work and how it actually works. But if I can jump into this and easily access a Steam library, it just seems like a no-brainer purely from a hardware standpoint, especially since we're not exactly drowning in Steam Deck 2 news. Following on from this, we got a little more information about The Blood of Dawnwalker, the game from Rebel Wolves Studios, some ex-CDPR devs, coming together to make something that is almost, at least aesthetically, very similar to The Witcher, but we play as a sort of half-vampire in an interesting setting. And the cool thing about this is all the gameplay was in-engine and everything, so we got a lot more details on that, just in terms of what to expect from it. Very cool little trailer. I would say none of it is exactly anything we didn't already know from previous discussions and interviews and stuff, but it is a good look at a work in progress. That game is supposed to be coming in 2026 sometime, so definitely one I'll be reviewing next year. Our next title's a little more fun. Super Meat Boy is seeing a 3D entry. I wanted to mention this one specifically, given that Astrobot won Game of the Year just last year, and this is kind of in that vein, and to be fair, it does look pretty fun. I don't know if it's something I would play or cover personally, but it looks like something I would play with my son at the very least. Either way, coming out in 2026. Our next thing of note was a little more information about Ninja Gaiden 4. Combat here looks appropriately incredible. We see some gameplay, some characters, some classic moves that will surely live up to the Ninja Gaiden legacy. But, on my end at least, this one is releasing on October 21st of this year, so we don't have too much longer to wait for this. My only hang-up personally is that time is going to be busy with a lot of other RPGs, so at least for me, I don't know that I'll get to this one immediately, but it's definitely on my radar for sure. It looks pretty cool. I love a good action game as it stands. Our next little entry after that is the announcement of Indiana Jones planned story DLC. Indiana Jones wound up being my Game of the Year last year because it is a surprisingly good game. Either way, this story DLC, which will center around the Giants or the Order of the Giants in Rome, so the part of the game everybody liked the most, and